When Amazon and Warner Bros. Released a trailer to announce the main villains of their new Batman cartoon, Batman Caped Crusader, there were a few names on the list that took me by surprise. Among the usual heavy hitters like Two-Face, Catwoman and the Penguin were less well-known characters such as the Gentleman Ghost, Nocturna, and the subject of today's video, Firebug. Now, Firebug's inclusion is surprising because he is a very obscure villain, one that has a similar gimmick to the better-known villain Firefly. And I don't think it would be unfair to say that he was an insignificant villain. He's so minor that I don't think he's appeared in any other Batman shows, not even Batman Brave and the Bold. And it turns out that insignificance is exactly why he was chosen for this episode of Caped Crusader. Given that this is the first time that I've covered this villain, I'm going to kick things off by looking at the comic book original so that we can compare him with what we saw in the show. Firebug is Joseph Rigger, and he first appeared in 1979's Batman 318. He was a former soldier and specialist in demolitions and incendiary weapons, who uses his skills to burn down dangerous slum housing that he blamed for the death of his family members. The run-down building with the peeling walls that saw his sister die from ingesting lead-based paint, and the rickety floors that saw his father fall to his death. The apartment complex whose lift broke down, leaving his mother trapped and unable to receive help after suffering a heart attack. Firebug wore a bold red and yellow costume that was supposed to evoke flames, which really made him stand out in Gotham's night sky. He seemed to meet his end after Batman foiled his schemes and turned himself into a volatile explosive. He intended to blow himself up along with the building, but was knocked out of the window, harmlessly exploding outside. However, in comic books, characters rarely stay dead. He returned in the pages of an obscure comic called Hero Hotline, where he was back at his old tricks, but was easily dealt with. And as you may have noticed, Firebug was originally African American, which was fairly unusual for Batman villains at the time. Only two others from that era come to mind off the top of my head, and that's Black Spider and Killer Croc. Post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, when most of DC's continuity was reset, Firebug was reimagined as a white man, which just goes to show that there has been a long history of characters changing race in Batman media over the years. This newer take on Firebug is presented as a loser. In his first appearance, he's introduced by getting a swirly from Batman after he was kicked out of Black Mask's False Face Society and replaced by the pyromaniac Firefly, who I've talked about in a video before. Firebug would try to stage a dramatic comeback, but accidentally blew himself up, causing some serious injuries. He'd later show up in the pages of Gotham Central, written by Caped Crusader head writer Ed Brubaker, after he sold his costume at an auction as a piece of memorabilia to Harlan Combs, a bored middle-class suburban dad that wanted to adopt a supervillain identity to give his tedious life a little spark. Given his appearance in Gotham Central, perhaps I shouldn't have been too surprised to see him turn up in the show. And this is the point that I say, if you're a fan of Caped Crusader and you haven't read Gotham Central, rectify that. Go do it as soon as you can because it's an excellent comic. So that brings us to Caped Crusader's version of Firebug, and he is completely different to what we've seen before. Their Firebug is a very short man who's very quiet and meek. He sits on the bed of his cell, staring blankly into the corner of a room, with his thumbs twitching, imitating the use of a lighter. He's rarely able to maintain eye contact unless he's wearing his insulated Firebug costume. Unlike the comic book version, this outfit is grey with very little colour, making it look more like Firefly's costume. And that becomes a running joke of sorts, with Detective Flass mistakenly referring to him as Firefly a few times, probably intentionally. When we're introduced to him, he has already been captured by the police, indicating that he's so weak that Batman wasn't needed to bring him in. His real name is never listed, and this lack of a name dehumanizes him. It makes him seem like he's an object, not a person. Firebug has been apprehended after a string of arsons, nicely teased in the third episode's newspaper headlines by the way, but he only comes into play after the newly formed Batman strike team brings in Dr. Harleen Quinzel to provide a psychological profile on Batman. She states that Batman is drawn to other costumed weirdos, so if you want to lure him out, you'll have to involve a costumed criminal. While Bullock and Flass are initially dismissive of Quinzel's presence, this sparks an idea within Flass. Bullock and Flass take Firebug from his cell and arrange for his escape within the poor area of town, the East End. While pretending to escort him to Arkham for an assessment, Flass and Bullock fake car trouble, leave a window open and casually mention that Firebug's gear can be found in the trunk of their car. Flass plays with his lighter to deliberately taunt Firebug, and the presence of the flame, even a tiny one, brings him out of his shell as he espouses the virtues of the flame and the truth that it will bring to the masses. He's very clearly a disturbed man, but Bullock and Flass don't care. They know full well that as soon as he gets free, he will act on his compulsion to start fires, and that area of Gotham is very densely populated, The casualties could be in their hundreds, if not the thousands. But this is inconsequential to the corrupt detectives. Flass and Bullock had their egos wounded when Batman beat them up after they tried to murder Catwoman. All they care about is getting revenge. They have no intention of arresting Batman, they want to murder him too. To the average person, Flass and Bullock's intentions would be pretty transparent. Hell, Barbara Gordon figures out what they're up to just based on the fact that they took Firebug out of his cell without permission. But Firebug isn't a normal person. He can't see that he's obviously being set up. All he cares about is the flame. And it's kind of funny to see how he tries to sneak out of the car by squeezing through the open window, but he falls and makes a loud thud. He still thinks he's being stealthy though as he opens the trunk and absconds with his equipment. Firebug refers to his outfit as a uniform, much to the amusement of Flass and Bullock. By referring to it as such, Firebug assigns it some legitimacy. Uniforms are intended to identify officials, and he clearly thinks of himself as some sort of emissary of the flames. But really, it's an insulated suit that allows him to withstand high temperatures while the flamethrowers on his wrists are being used. Shortly after his escape, we get the best insight into Firebug's mentality, as he watches a group of children playing in the streets from an alleyway. He imagines how they'll look after he sets the neighbourhood on fire, although he thinks they will all be happy and grateful for the enlightenment that comes from being consumed by the flames. He is completely delusional, and this scene is made all the more creepy by the background music, with what sounds like children singing songs you might hear on the playground. Firebug proceeds to set the building on fire, with a positively beaming smile across his face the entire time. He genuinely thinks that he's doing these people a favour by destroying their homes and endangering their lives. Bullock and Flass arrive on the scene and wait for Batman to turn up, paying no attention to the people of the tenement that are pouring out onto the streets. Once they spot Batman, they commandeer a small group of men to go into the building to get their revenge. If it wasn't already clear what awful human beings they are, it's abundantly clear now. They show no regard for the civilians whose lives they've upended, or the lives of their colleagues that they're endangering. All they want to do is get a measure of payback. This is starkly contrasted with Commissioner Gordon. Gordon has a direct connection to this part of town. It's where he used to walk his beat as a patrolman, and he cares about the community. As the Commissioner, I doubt he's expected to go on the front lines, but when Bullock and Flass ignore his orders not to engage, he heads down to the scene of the crime personally. Gordon tells the other officers to stay back and help the people that got out, while he goes in with Montoya to try to save anyone that remains inside, including the cops that Batman has clearly beaten senseless. And it's during this scene that we see the true villains of the episode. Yes, Firebug is the costumed villain, but he's very clearly a sick man. The real villains are Harvey Bullock and Arnold Flass. Firebug realises he's out of fuel, so he raises his hands and surrenders to Flass and Bullock. Flass, however, tells Bullock that Firebug will doubtlessly talk about how he was released, and Bullock responds as he only knows how, by shooting Firebug, sending him careening out of the window, falling to his death. The moment is captured on camera by Eel O'Brien and would go on to be touted in the press as an example of two brave cops taking down the insane pyromaniac that had threatened so many lives. In reality, Bullock and Flass were the orchestrators of this disaster. Everything that happened that night is their fault. It's important to note that Bullock and Flass weren't at all concerned with freeing trapped residents, or even the safety of their colleagues. They were looking for Batman and Firebug with murderous intent. This is contrasted with Batman and Commissioner Gordon, who both go out of their way to save people. This episode is the birth of Batman and Gordon's working relationship, as Gordon gets to see Batman's heroism firsthand. While Bullock and Flass are presented as heroes in the press, Gordon gets all of the praise for saving the trapped children. Mayor Jessup's response to this is to put Flass and Bullock in charge of the anti-Batman squad that Montoya had been leading. And it's really interesting to note that after this episode, the anti-Batman squad plays an insignificant role in the series, indicating Bullock and Flass's inadequacy. Under Montoya, they had set up multiple sting operations to try and capture Batman, but once those two brutes took over, no significant progress was made. By this point, Gordon is 100% certain of Flass and Bullock's wrongdoing, and has started to build a working relationship with Batman, even if he can never admit it. Getting back to Firebug, when his participation was announced, there were questions as to why such an insignificant character was being used. Surely they meant Firefly instead. Well, no. His insignificance is exactly why he was chosen. He existed purely to be sacrificed by Bullock and Flass to cement their status as villains, and this was a very bold choice by the writers. Harvey Bullock's incarnations in Batman the Animated Series and Gotham are particularly beloved by fans, so turning him into a stone-cold murderer was bound to be controversial. If Batman had gotten to Firebug first, Batman would have beaten him up, sure, but he'd end up in Arkham Asylum where he could receive treatment. Bullock and Flass ensured that there would be no possibility of recovery for Firebug, and it's an all too familiar story to see how they were praised for their actions. and this episode cements them as truly reprehensible lowlifes. Okay, that's it for this video essay. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd like to hear more about Batman Caped Crusader, why not check out our podcast Totally Schway Flip Side, where my wife and I have gone through all 10 episodes. This is a spoiler-filled conversation about each episode in sequential order, so only check this out if you've watched the show or if you have no intentions of ever watching it yourself. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month, which will grant you early access to my video essays, and some supplementary perks like custom emojis, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, and community posts. And special thanks to my current channel members, who are all listed on the screen right now. Next time I'll shine the spotlight on the headline villain of episode 5, the stress of her regard, one Dr. Harleen Quinzel, Harley Quinn, and how she was completely unlike any version of the character we've seen before. Hope to see you then.